Okay, so now we're going to switch our attention to larger scale structures in the brain. And, we're interested in, all the interneurons, right, that are found in this, remarkable structure. The cerebrum, parts of the brainstem, certainly parts of the spinal cord, your central nervous system. I want to turn our attention a little bit to some of the larger scale structures and networks in the central nervous system. However, I do want us to have a good understanding about the power of linking up even a very few neurons, in a network. Networks do remarkable things, networks of neurons. At one end, let's say you'll have an afferent neuron, working, its way in, carrying information, say, about, injury. You injured yourself, right? If you cut yourself, for example, you spill, the contents of cells, you rip open phospholipid bilayers and the proteins spill out. And some of these, specialized cells that are out here, these afferent neurons are going to actually have, specialized receptors that'll bind some of those released proteins. And they're going to open channels to sodium, depolarize, and start a electrical message working their way back in towards your spinal cord, right? Coming in through that dorsal root of your spinal nerve. And then they're going to make connections with an interneuron, right, in the spinal cord. So you're going to have a little neuron here that's going to be, linking the afferent input, to a motor neuron, the motor output that's going to go out to your arm. You're going to cut yourself. It's going to work its way in through the interneuron. It's going to stimulate and, pull you back, basically, right? It's a little more complicated because there's an excitatory pathway that depolarizes, that allows for the motor neuron, to this muscle, for example, if I'm going this way, to contract, right? We're going to see the neurotransmitter out here is acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction. That'll be later. And then, we're going to have to relax this muscle. So it'll have to be an inhibitory circuit in the spinal cord for that. But a lot of basic reflexes, don't necessarily involve a tremendous number of neurons. There's a relatively simple networks that are involved, and yet that is a very biologically relevant, sort of behavioral response to detection of the stimulus in my environment. Like my injury, moves me out of danger really quickly with just a simple, set of connections. However, when we're talking again about the brain, here, you got a lot of interneurons in here. There's a lot of, distribution of information in here that allows for, far more complicated sorts of responses. And we're going to see this outer surface of the brain. This is this wrinkled, stuff. This is called cortex, right? Which means bark, the bark of your brain. We're going to see drugs can have significant impact over all of the important cognitive aspects of our perceptual experience, our decision-making, our memory, our felt experience of our body. This is going to involve, areas of cortex, much more complex interneuronal networks that are located up here in the cerebrum.